Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the Funko Game of Thrones Legacy Collection Figure 3, the Hound. Warning, choking hazard does contain small parts. It is recommended for ages 17 and up, and it actually looks like the Hound comes with a fair bit included. Comes with a sword, comes also with his helmet. It definitely looks like a figure that I'm going to enjoy getting out of packaging. On the back side of the package, there's a picture of the Hound from the show. Series 1 of the Legacy Collection consists of Jon Snow, Tyrion Lannister, the Hound, White Walker, Daenerys Targaryen, and Ned Stark. And on the underside of the package, you can head over to www.funko.com. You can also head over to facebook.com/Original Funko and Twitter over at Original Funko as well. Spot's going to take a break and get this opened up. I definitely can't wait to get him out of packaging. And when we come back, we're going to get a better look at the Hound. There's more heading away, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. The Hound is a quite impressive looking figure. My like for this particular figure is on par really with Tyrion. I think these two figures are the real strong candidates for this line. The figure itself definitely comes with a lot of accessories. Now, in order for me to show you the accessories, I unfortunately have to have him probably resting down. This one ankle is extremely stiff and it's angled down. I'm going to have to loosen this a little bit, but unfortunately the ankle will not adjust up that I can get him to stand properly. He is probably going to just topple over. Yeah, so I'm just going to lay him down for a second. We'll look at the accessories and then we'll revisit the Hound. For starters, you get yourself a standalone sheath with sword. The sword is retractable. And it's pliable. I don't know if it's as pliable as Jon Snow's sword. But it's definitely a lot more pliable than Tyrion Lannister's axe. It's a nice looking sword, and same thing can really be said for the sheath. Really nice, phenomenal detail put into them. Now you can take the sword and you can slide it just down the side here. He has a little loop in his belt where you can keep that sheath. Also, the Hound has an additional sword, an additional sheath on his back here that you can also bring out the sword. So he has two swords, very, very different from one another, but very nicely detailed. The last of his accessories, and one of the more impressive of the accessories, is his helmet. Though he really only wore it in only a few episodes of season 1, it is definitely a very impressive looking piece. The top section is a more denser plastic, while the bottom section of the helmet is more rubbery. You can take it and put it over his head. And the one thing I really like about it too is they've devised a way to make the helmet in such a way that it still fits over his head. It doesn't look overly large for the figure where it's this big mammoth-sized head. And you don't you don't sacrifice any of the articulation. If I can get the helmet off here. You don't forfeit any of the articulation, any of the sculpt of the head in order to accommodate the fact that he's got the helmet, which is a nice touch. It also looks like it's hinged too, so the helmet, you can pivot the Hound head up, or you can have it closer down. It's entirely up to you. But that's a good way, pretty good way that they devised to make the helmet. If it had been a sturdier plastic, you probably would have had to forfeit something in the sculpt of the head. I'm certainly glad to see that that was not the case. Speaking of his head, quite a nice sculpt. The downside though is he still has the scarring on the one side of his face, but the hair coming down kind of masks some of it. I kind of wish it was a little more drooped back. But I think it's a pretty good looking face sculpt on the Hound. He's got his beard and the one more closed eye due to the scarring on the side of his face. But it's really some nice work. He's got his chainmail armor going as well. And I really liked with Jon Snow, he had a lot of layers to it. The Hound has equally, or if not more, layers than what Jon Snow had, because he's got the armor, but he's got all these extra pieces over top of it. The shoulder pieces are separate, the elbow pieces are separate, and of course his chainmail skirt is separate as well, concealing very nicely the articulation in his leg. He's also quite a tall figure too, as he should be. In the show, the Hound was a tall character, probably slightly smaller than his brother, the Mountain, but still a very imposing sized figure. Just for your scale references, there's Tyrion Lannister, and there's Jon Snow. He is still quite a bit taller than Tyrion, for obvious reasons, and he is still taller than Jon Snow. So they are a good scale to one another. Speaking of the Mountain, hopefully Funko is going to continue to release these legacy figures from Game of Thrones. I think we're still getting a Series 2, but I would love to see them create and release a Mountain figure. Or even like an Arya Stark that could go around the mountainside with the Hound. That would also be very cool as well. For your articulation, let's actually just take the sword out just so it's not in the way here. For your articulation, the Hound has a ball joint in the head. Head moves quite easily left and right, up and down. The shoulders, despite the fact that he does have the shoulder pads, because they are more free-floating pieces that have been affixed to the arm rather than the shoulder, it means that his shoulders can still freely move left and right, back and forth, front and back. He does have a hinge in the elbow, and once again, the armor completely is out of the way of any restrictions to that articulation. The arm can also rotate back and forth. He has a swivel and hinge in the hand. He has a swiveled waist, which again is very stiff on this figure. And then because he's got the skirt concealing a lot of his articulation, it masks quite the flexibility he has in his legs. So his legs do go forward, back. He has a swivel in the thigh. He has what looks to be a double bend at the knee, but once again, they've really concealed the articulation, and I like that so much. But you can see he's got a double bend at the knee. One leg is a little stiffer than the other. The same thing can be said for the ankle. For some reason, this ankle is extremely stiff. I might just put it in the freezer and try to get that to loosen up a bit. But he does have a bend and swivel in the foot, also a pivot as well. So you can get some really nice poses from the Hound. I think, again, of the figures that we've already looked at, my favorite could potentially be the Hound. I know initially I really liked Tyrion Lannister, but the Hound really looks as good as he does in the show. It looks like he was just taken right out of the show. It's phenomenal, really, the paint and the sculpt that they put into this piece. The Hound, I'm going to give him a solid 9. In today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the Funko Game of Thrones Legacy figures. We're having a look today at figure 3? Figure 3, the Hound. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have a look at the other 3 figures? Spot's losing his track here. Other 3 figures in this line of Legacy Collection Game of Thrones figures. Those reviews will definitely be heading your way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.